was meta, and I loved it, is the dialogue that you're having with yourself, but also with your audience, about the process of the filmmaking itself. And you're guiding us, not just with the images, but through your words on how to read your images. I also commend you on the use of animation in lieu of actual footage, and I just wanted to know what, for you to talk to us about that as a film student. That was fascinating for me. Thank you so much.
Thanks for all your observations. I find it difficult to remember things, which is why I make films. But if I can go backwards, like the animation is 100 years ago, a Russian filmmaker called Dziga Vertov said, film is the opium of the masses, down with fairy tale bourgeois scenarios, long live real cinema. So that's that. I really can't remember, that wasn't a joke. What, can you run them past again?
No, just this conversation you were having with, of course, you were talking to your son, but also to us as the audience, about how the choice of imagery, the power of filmmaking, the medium that you were working with.
I think the film works on lots of different levels. It's meant to. I think people are sophisticated. I think people are fed up of get me out of here, whatever it's called. And what's that thing? Love Island. So people are ready for intelligent cinema and film, and so this hopefully does some of it. But I think some of the points you made, in terms of the politics of the situation of where we are at the moment, I think it's important that film is liberated, as it says in the film, because you can't, I don't believe in revolution just for one aspect. Revolution has to be for everybody, for all parts of society, and for everything that we do. Language, you're absolutely right. No, I know what I need to say. So basically, the most important thing now is what do we do in terms of action, yeah? So we've had this for 50 years. The inquest system is a total and utter distraction. We have not had one single successful prosecution that has come out of the inquest system. And anybody that puts their faith in it and tries to improve it is completely delusional. It will never ever be achieved. So what we have to do, because I think Brenda makes a very good point about how this country is contained. A lot of people are contained in lots of different communities. How to break out of that is that if the judicial system doesn't give justice, then we have to go outside. So what we're doing, together with the families, is we've set up the People's Tribunal on Police Killings, which will be in October next year. And the families will present the evidence for manslaughter murder in the cases that we're presenting. We've chosen 2% of the 2,000, so we have only 20 cases, and all 20 of them are manslaughter murder. These are cases which have been dismissed by the judicial system. And we're having people from Palestine, from the States, from Brazil, from France, coming in, and they will be the tribunal panel. With that evidence, the families are then going to go outside the UK and go to the International Criminal Court and to the United Nations, because if you can find a secretary that worked in Nazi Germany in 1945 and take her to the ICC, as was done this year, we know where Tuffy lives and all these other police officers. So it just has to be pushed. It will happen. If you call the police officer a liar in this country at the time of Mangrove, you would be thrown in jail until Mangrove happened and they proved that the police were lying. Then we've had the Lawrence on racism, we have the Bradford 12 around the right of self-defense against racist attack. And so this thing about deaths in police custody, which are really police killings, it will go eventually, but it's not about change. It's not about improving the system. As Leslie said, it's there, the tools are there, it's a political will. Political will is changed by the people, not by the government. And so that's what this film tries to help to do.
I just wanted to respond to the point you were making about prisons and restorative justice and so on. And I'm going to frame this in the context of a dear friend of mine who's not with us anymore. Her name was Pauline Campbell. And if you've never heard of her, the first thing you need to do when you leave here is Google Pauline Campbell, prison campaigner. She's not with us anymore. And I remember having a conversation with her once about prisons, and we said, yeah, you know, there are some people in prison who need to be in prison. And some of these police officers are candidates in that respect. They need to be in prison. But there are people who shouldn't be in prison also. And this is why Pauline campaigned. Pauline's daughter, Sarah Campbell, was sent to prison for trying to kill herself, effectively. It's a bit more detailed than that, but essentially that is what it was. And then she succeeded in achieving that when she was in the prison. And that was her only child. And Pauline campaigned for years and years. And her operandus kind of way of doing things was to block prison vans bringing the women in. So she would blockade the gates of prisons, and the police would be called and she'd be dragged away and so on and so forth, but she was back again tomorrow or next week. She never gave up. Not only did she do that though, she put the fear of God into politicians and so on and so forth, and brought about some changes in the way that vulnerable women, or women who have committed low-level crime like housing benefit fraud, who have been sent to prison for God's sake. I mean, what's the point of that? But there's still so much more to do. And I always say this, and I will continue saying it, it can't just be left to us, the families and campaigners. You all have a role as well. And the silence of the masses is a tool that the oppressor will use. Just remember that. So yeah, I think there's place for restorative justice, and you know, people with certain offences don't need to be going to prison. The prisons are full of people with dyslexia and autism and mental health issues. Come on. But it is, some people deserve to go there, like the people we saw in this film. Police officers, people in uniform, they need to be in prison. No restorative justice for them. Send them to jail.
Okay, I was also going to comment on restorative justice and police reform. So as said at the start, I live in the US, so I'm speaking in the context of the US, but I think it's also relevant here. It's important to remember that the prison, as indeed all system, is not broken. It does exactly what it was designed to do. And the prison as an industry is a multi-million, multi-pound industry. So we need to remember that. And I think it's a business. And for me, one of the things that the film did was it kind of demystified the system to tell us that it's not this dark thing under a veil. It's something that we can question, we can challenge. And in the same way your very question about police reform, if we question it and we challenge it, then we can change it. And then specifically when we think of restorative justice works when we recognize the value of mediation. And I think the film shows it, and certainly within my brother's case, police in particular, I would say, are poor on mediation skills. So to ask the system to support a process that requires mediation requires the system to make significant change. And that is perhaps something they won't do, and so therefore will stay with the prison. So it's for us to say there are other ways to reform individuals, there are other ways to support individuals who are vulnerable. Mediation is a core part of that. Restorative justice, what can we do to make that happen?
Yeah, well, as everyone was speaking, I just started to think about certain things that happened in the case of my cousin Ibrahim when he died. The next day we were campaigning outside Upton Park police station, and I had an interview with a cameraman who was, asking me questions, and I looked up, and all I could see was police officers with eggs throwing them down at the crowd. Absolutely God's honest truth. They were having literally throwing eggs at the crowd downstairs, and I said, wow, what's this? Somebody's just died, you know. You don't even have sympathy. It's a joke for you. You're laughing. I could see the smirks and everything. And I said, I think this police force has to be kind of demolished and restructured again. Because I believe there's a lot of people that are in the institution, they are proper racist, and they specifically go in to damage people. And that's what I believe. Nobody can tell me otherwise, because that day they should have had respect for the dead. And they didn't. They were throwing eggs. Yeah? Another thing is that in the prison system, we have a system that is totally broken as well, because you go to jail, you come out, you have a criminal record, you can't get a job. What do? You go back and you steal, and it just becomes a repeat cycle for most other people. So for me, the system needs to be reformed in the prison as well as, you know, and also I believe they should start by vetting police officers before they come into the force. Because I remember watching a documentary a few months ago, and a gentleman who was a black police officer at the time, he said what they used to do when they used to go out, they'd put their coats on, but they'd have the NF, at the time it was National Front in the 70s and the 80s, they'd have the NF badge in their coat. So it's obvious what they're about. So I think that they have to revamp the system, vet people, understand some people, psychology of people, and I think that it might be a better system if they do that. Okay?